Welcome to Michael Potts F1. Everything Formula One, but from a photographer's point of view. Round 19, the USA Grand Prix from Austin, Texas. This was my first trip to the Circuit of the Americas, and I must say it was a wonderful experience. I stayed in a delightful bed and breakfast. We had glorious weather. I love Texas barbecue, and oh wow, what a race! I arrived in Austin from Burgundy, where I'd been taking part in a group exhibition for the Côte de Chalonnais Wine Festival. If you want to find out more about that, click in the link above. As you can see, I'm here in Mexico City, ready for the next race. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's look back over the USA Grand Prix. The big question in the paddock this weekend wasn't whether Red Bull could clinch this championship, but it was rather how they were going to be punished for breaching the rules in the budget cap. From 2021, Formula One has introduced a new system called the budget cap, which controls the amount of money that each team can spend. They're all limited to spend $145 million in 2021. That number is actually going to decrease over time. The purpose of it is to make Formula One fairer, to give the smaller teams a good opportunity of competing against the larger teams. This is a huge change because some of the top teams had budgets in excess of $500 million for a year. The FIA announced that all of the teams, apart from Red Bull, have managed to keep within the budget cap. Red Bull is still debating whether the overspend is interpreted correctly. They're adamant they submitted their finances under the budget cap, and the other teams are irate. As you can imagine, they see this as Red Bull gaining an unfair advantage. Zach Brown from McLaren actually went as far as calling this cheating. The FIA have kept the sanctions of a budget cap breach deliberately vague, the theory being that if they tell the teams what the punishment would be, they would game it out, weighing up whether it was worth taking the penalty to gain that specific advantage. However, before Red Bull could announce anything, we had the heartbreaking news that Dietrich Mateschitz, the Red Bull co-founder, had passed away. This was desperately sad for everyone in the paddock because he's had such a profound effect on motor racing. Consider that 8 of the current 20 drivers have either gone through the Red Bull driver program or are currently driving for a Red Bull team. He brought back the Austrian Grand Prix, which is now one of the best events of the year. And he's got 2 teams in Formula One, one of which, run by a drinks company, is going head-to-head with some of the world's best car manufacturers and winning. It's remarkable what he's done, and it goes well beyond Formula One. He's had Red Bull drivers winning the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's had Red Bull teams winning the WRC. He's had Red Bull drivers winning MotoGP. Every level of motorsport, there is a Red Bull influence. And Red Bull is one of the catalysts that has made motorsport so enjoyable and accessible to so many more people. Dieter was so passionate about motorsport, and Red Bull went out and honoured him in the best possible way they could. They won the race. They won the Constructors' Championship, the first time since 2013, ending Mercedes' years of dominance. The first photograph I'd like to share with you is taken just after Max won. Here he is with his girlfriend Kelly Piquet. They've just embraced, and she's now telling him how proud she is of him. I got a bit lucky standing next to her to capture the special moment. I love photographing the driver's celebration at the end of the race. You see them at their rawest, at their most natural. This is where there's pure joy, and they tend to drop all pretense after they've won a race. I'm going to be sticking a little bit to the theme of celebrations with the next few photographs. This is a photograph I don't usually get to photograph. It's of the Red Bull team celebrating as Max crosses the finish line. The team have climbed onto this metal fence and are hanging off and cheering as Max goes past. I've shot into the sun to help make the image more dramatic. In post-production, I've pushed clarity and sharpness, and I've darkened the shadows. And I think that makes the image a bit more powerful. Next is the image of the aftermath after the team celebration. This is an image of pure joy and pure carnage. The team are spraying Red Bull all over each other. I knew this was going to happen, so I shot with a very, very fast shutter speed. I wanted to catch the globules of liquid as they flew through the air. You see, some of them are getting caught by the light and going quite orange and golden, whereas some are dark and silhouetted. There's so much going on in this image that I'd like to zoom in and have a look at the details of some of the parts of it. First of all, we have in the bottom left Kelly Piquet making a mad dash getting away from all the spray. Then if we look at the back of the group, you can see there's so much liquid being thrown up in the air that you can barely see the pit board that says 2022 champions. Here in the foreground, you can see Sergio Perez. He's about to unleash another can on his teammates. Apart from spraying Red Bull, there was also much champagne drunk, probably from the largest bottle of champagne that I've ever seen. Does anyone know what this size of bottle is called? My guess would be a Nebuchadnezzar, but please let me know in the comments below. The Ferrari sparkling wine actually doesn't have a relationship to Ferrari the car. The sparkling wine was first created by Giulio Ferrari in 1902. He wanted to make an Italian sparkling wine that could compete with French champagne. I've tried it, it's actually really good. The final celebration shot is of Max and his father Jos sitting on the championship-winning car. You can also see in the background the mechanics are busy dismantling it and are packing it away, ready to take it to Mexico. This was a special win for the team. You can see how much emotion they have. To have finally beaten Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship after so many years of dominance is really remarkable. You felt that while they were celebrating the title, they were also celebrating the life of Dietrich Mateschitz and enjoying a moment that he would have undoubtedly loved. The USA Grand Prix has loads of celebrities, and if you're watching on TV, I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing jokes about Brad Pitt being in the pits. The Hollywood actor actually attended all 3 days of the event, which is really unusual. Most often, celebrities only arrive for race day. The reason he was there so much was because he was doing research for a film that will be shot next year, based on Formula One. Apparently there's going to be filming at some of the events next year, so if you do come as a spectator, you might become an extra. The film is being funded by Apple, and CEO Tim Cook was at the event. He had the honor of waving the checkered flag at the end of the race, even though his performance was probably the most lackluster of all flag wavers we've had this year. This shot of Brad Pitt is taken from the grid, where he's flashing his cheeky grin. I've been told that his role in the movie is going to be that of a great but washed up racing driver, trying to train the next young gun. I got this quite cool shot of Shaquille O'Neal. He's silhouetted against a bright blue background. He actually DJ'd after the race, and apparently he was pretty good. We also had DJ Cassidy and singer Wyclef Jean here engrossed in conversation with Chloe Grace Moretz. Adding a bit of humor was voice impression master Connor Moore, who impersonates the drivers, and he's been an absolute hit on YouTube. But more significantly for me was getting this shot of Ed Sheeran. One of my first races that I shot professionally was the 2018 Barcelona Grand Prix. And here I was convinced that I was shooting Ed Sheeran. I'd followed him throughout the paddock, on the grid, everywhere. Only to be told it wasn't Ed Sheeran, but it was actually Rupert Grint, best known as Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. But let's take a step back to Thursday. On Thursday, a lot of the drivers walk the track. It's an important opportunity for them to see how the track has evolved in the year, but it's also a great opportunity for photographers, especially those like me who haven't been to the track before. It's an opportunity for me to discover the corners, also work out how long it takes to walk from one spot to another. That'll help me plan my race weekend. And while I'm busy doing this, it's an opportunity to get some pretty cool shots of the drivers. Here's one of Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin team. They're coming over the rise with the sunset behind them. I've increased the oranges a bit, and I've made the figures a little bit darker so that the image pops a bit more. Lance had a huge crash with soon-to-be teammate Fernando Alonso. I wonder if that's going to spice up the relationship between the two next year. Aston Martin were actually really strong at this event, even if the results don't necessarily show that. This is a photograph of Sebastian Vettel taken in the media pen. There's a particularly good light at this moment, with his face being lit up and the background being quite nice and dark. Seb surprised everyone by leading the race for a bit, before dropping down to 7th place. Thursday and Fridays are great days in the paddock. Drivers are a little bit more relaxed here, and there's fewer people around. It's a good opportunity to sneak up on drivers while they're giving interviews. Here's a portrait of George Russell. It's a bit close, but that allows you to gaze into his sparkly blue eyes. If you look carefully, you can also see that he's missed a spot shaving, just on the top of his cheek. George has very striking features, and he's a great subject to photograph. I managed to capture this shot of Lewis giving an interview. I framed his face with the Mercedes logo in the background, giving it a kind of a halo effect. He's trying to attach his microphone, and the moment that I've caught his hand gives him a sort of philosopher's pose. It was a great weekend for Lewis fashion. On Thursday, he wore the striking red and black outfit by Ferragamo. Friday, a more casual chest sweater by Tommy Hilfiger. And then on Saturday, he turned the funk up with this purple and black Louis Vuitton suit from their resort collection. Finally, on Sunday, he took to this all-white look, again by Ferragamo. You might be wondering why I focus so much on Lewis's fashion. It's partly because he wears quite cool, eclectic, eccentric outfits, but also he's the only driver to do this. Sometimes Pierre Gasly or Yuki Tsunoda will wear something on a Thursday or Friday, but it won't be anywhere near as exciting as what Lewis wears. And it's quite sad. A lot of the teams have fashion brand connections, and they should be maximizing this opportunity. It just brings another story, another point of interest to the race weekend. Leaving fashion, let me show you some of the photographs of the cars I took this weekend. The first one is of Lewis Hamilton. It's taken between some of the fencing and the support structures for the giant TV screens that they have around the track. These screens let the fans watch what's going on. I've managed to capture him in a small gap between all of this track furniture. I've shot with a slow shutter speed to give it a sense of speed. And there's a beautiful bit of golden light coming through here. I actually had quite a lot of fun shooting through objects this weekend. Here's a shot of Nicholas Latifi, shot a little bit further around the corner, where the track's in the shade of the grandstand. That's changed the photograph completely. It's now this cool blue silhouetted image, as opposed to that orange contrasty image of Lewis. This is a really useful technique in motorsports photography, especially if you're shooting from the stands, because Quite often, you're not in control of your environment. If you're shooting from a difficult position with a lot of obstacles, it's important to be able to find ways of using those to enhance your photograph. COTA has this pretty cool observation tower in Sector 3 of the track. It's an unusual structure and it really works well as a subject. As you can see in the shot of Max and Perez, it's peering over the track like a periscope. But it's even better to shoot from. I got this shot of Carlos Sainz late on Friday evening. His car is just between the two long shadows of the tower, and the light hitting his car between those two dark spots really makes his Ferrari pop. Here's one of Daniel Ricciardo going past some painted stars and stripes. Again, golden orange light and beautiful long shadows of the car. The Friday session went a little bit longer than normal. The drivers had an extra 30 minutes to test next year's tyres. For photographers, that meant we had an extra 30 minutes photographing cars in golden hour. That's the time of the day where light is at its richest. This shot of Charles sees him sparking as he flies over the curbs on the final corner. There's a vast Texas flag seen flying over the circuit, and there's a stunning shot you can get of the cars coming over hill with the flag in the background. The heat haze generated by the cars dissolves the bottom of the flag a little bit, as you can see in this shot of George Russell. I shot this at 2,000th of a second, so very fast. I wanted to capture the car as sharp as possible, accentuating the crisp lines of the Mercedes. The crowd at COTA are amazing. There's so many people and they're all so excited to be there and they're so into their motorsport. And they make a useful background element to a photograph. I got this shot of Alonso just after turn 1. He's heading down the hill. There's big clouds in the background making a dramatic image, but I really love the silhouetted crowd on the side of the image and how that adds to the composition. The track gives you a lot of opportunities to do different types of photography. Here's a slow shutter speed shot of Alex Albon. I've taken this at a 1/6 of a second, and it's as he's come under one of the walkways that go over the track. The car is very distorted, but that gives you the sense of movement, the sense that it's traveling very, very fast. Talking of Williams, they announced American driver Logan Sargent will be racing for them next year alongside Alex Albon, under the condition that Logan gets his super license. He needs to finish at least 5th in this year's Formula 2 championship. Currently, he's lying 3rd. He had an opportunity to win Formula 3 at his first attempt, but he got bundled out at the first corner on the final race, handing Oscar Piastri the title. It's going to be great to have an American driver on the grid next year, and I think out of all of the potential candidates, Logan Sargent probably is the best. Remember, he's already raced at a lot of these tracks, and he's making the step up from F2 to F1, which is not going to be as big a technical or cultural shock as going from IndyCar to Formula 1. He's a hell of a nice kid, and I'm expecting great things from this young American. Sainz was the unlucky Ferrari driver of the weekend. He nailed qualifying, got a great pole position, only to be tagged from behind in the first corner, knocking him out of the race. This shot is taken on Saturday, just after he celebrated taking pole position. Finally, I leave you with a shot of Daniel Ricciardo putting on his helmet with his face all scrunched up. It really wasn't a great weekend for the Australian. He arrived on horseback, wearing a cowboy hat to great fanfare on Thursday, but his race weekend got derailed from there. He finished 16th when Lando was 6th, and he just looked completely off the pace. Despite being such a crowd favourite, multiple Grand Prix winner, he's going to be out of a drive next year. There's only one spot available, and that's at Haas. I've actually heard rumours that he's in talks with Haas, and this is one of the main reasons why the American team hasn't announced either Nico Hülkenberg or Mick Schumacher as their drivers for next year. For Haas, it makes perfect sense. They get a top-level driver, lots of experience, race winner, and a huge crowd favourite. He'll bring to the team what they've lacked for so many years, and that is character. Haas have just signed a big deal with MoneyGram to bring them on as a title sponsor next year, so they have more money to play with. Daniel's other options include taking a sabbatical or going and being a reserve driver for Mercedes or Ferrari. Daniel wants to win championships, and if he can't do that, he wants to win races, or at least be on the podium. Now, realistically, he's not going to get that at Haas, but what he could do is build a team around him, get a car that works for him, so that he can raise all the damage that he's done to his reputation with these 2 years at McLaren. If he took a sabbatical or he took a reserve driver role at one of the bigger teams, people are going to remember his P16 in Austin rather than, a fantastic fight from the back of the grid to get P8 in a Haas. He's got so much work to do to rebuild his reputation, to get back to a top team, and to win those championships and win those races. And this is where Haas could be an absolute blessing. They have a very, very tight technical relationship with Ferrari. This helps them produce a decent racing car on a very small budget. But where it will help Daniel is Ferrari will see all of his race data. And if they ever need to replace Charles or Carlos, they'll have all of the information they could possibly want on Daniel. At this point, he's going to make sure that his name is at the top of the list for that moment when Lewis retires, or if Charles or Carlos leave Ferrari. There's no way he's going back to Red Bull, McLaren, or Alpine. And that doesn't leave him very many options. Possibly Audi when they become a works team, but that's 2026, and by then he'll be an old man. Personally, I think Daniel needs to do something to remind us what a great talent he really is. Thank you for watching my review of the USA Grand Prix. I really hope you've enjoyed it. What did you think of the race? Please let me know in the comments below. If you did like this video, please do like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Next stop is Mexico City, and right now I'm off to the Frida Kahlo Museum to get a little bit of culture before the race weekend starts. Until next time, goodbye.